Tonight's code of conduct is to drive safely, defensively, and courteously. Ben, you have any good words of wisdoms for this code item?
That's a good one for today.
That's what I was thinking.
So yeah, I saw one there was one in the median right down below exit 18. Just trying to go a little bit too fast on a day like today.
Yep.
Plan
ahead and take your time. Yeah. Plan ahead and take your time. Remember that following distance today. Make sure you can stop. So good job over the last week. Our count's up to 215 days without a recordable and 30 days without a first aid related injury. So let's keep it going here. We're starting the season off strong, and let's continue it with a good safety briefing and first thing in the morning. And again, utilize health and safety as you need to help control hazards on job sites, or proper PPE or right tool for the job, making sure guards are in place, and watch those slip, trips, and falls today. With that said, Amy with PT 360 is gonna kind of help us with our next wellness series. So take it away, Amy.
Good morning. Let's see. I'm going to share my screen here. All right. So happy New Year. And with the new year, we're going to do some wellness goals. So whenever I think of wellness, I think of the blue zones. I think I've mentioned this before. The blue zones are 5 areas in the world where people live to 100 more than any other place in the world. So these people are healthy, they live long lives, they have decreased risks of cardiovascular disease and cancer. So they've been very highly studied. And there are 9 components to the blue zones that allow these people to live as long as they do with minimum disease. So they're divided into 4 different areas. So moving, having a good outlook with purpose and being able to downshift, meditate, pray, whatever that means to you. Eat wisely. So eating what they call the 80% rule, filling yourself up to 80%, not overfilling yourself at other 20%. Having a more plant-based diet, not saying you have to go vegetarian or vegan, but having minimal non-plant-based foods. Having some wine or alcohol in your life is fairly common in these areas. And finally, being connected, having a good community, putting friends and family first, and having some sense of belonging within that community. So from the PT perspective, we're going to focus on 2 from there: exercise and nutrition. And then I added a 3rd one in this year: injury management. We've talked about this quite a bit in the past couple of years. And I think putting in some kind of injury management goal for ourselves this year would actually be quite good. So why do we make goals? Why do we make goals January 1st? There's some interesting studies about, actually making goals on big events like January 1st, aspiring to having a goal for a wedding or some other important thing in your life. And that actually helps us to keep our goals in many ways. Goals give us an intention. It gives us a purpose. It gives us something to aspire to. For those of us that are competitive, it gives us a target. Really important, a goal has a beginning and an end. I think sometimes we make goals that are just very wide and have no endpoint. I want to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. I want to lose 50 pounds. Those are just these big goals, and we have no way to get there and no endpoint. When do we want to do this in? And those endpoints help us to actually achieve those goals. So that's really important. In business, you guys are probably all groaning when you hear these SMART goals. We don't have to make our goals SMART, but I think just considering all of these components can help you actually achieve your goals. So you don't have to write down. I know when we do our goals for work, we have to have every single component in here. I don't expect everyone to sit and write their nutrition goals to have every component in here, but it's something to consider when we're thinking about our goals. Is it a measurable goal? Can we achieve it? Is it something that's realistic, or is climbing Mount Kilimanjaro something that's not realistic for our life right now? Do we say, let's climb Mount Mansfield instead? And that timestamp, having that endpoint is really important. I also like goals to be positive. Having positive goals changes your mindset about what you are doing. So saying I'm going to walk a mile a day versus sitting on the couch less. Walking a mile a day is something that's a little bit more positive. It gives you something to do versus taking something away. And I think most of us do not like having something taken away from us, whether it's by ourselves or by other people, and it makes us a little cranky. So having those positive goals can achieve sitting on the couch less, but we've changed the mindset of how we're doing it. Same thing, eating a bowl of veggies a day. We're adding something healthy in. It doesn't say I'm taking away a sweet. I know for myself, I need to have a little sweet every day. If you take that away from me, it's not going to be happy. I'm not going to be happy. But if I add a bowl of veggies in, that's also making me healthier. Another good one is eating dinner with my family 2 nights a week versus not working late as much. Hopefully eating dinner with your family is something that you could look forward to. It might allow you to even cook with your family versus not working late as much, has other nuances along with it. So I want to share my goals with you. So for my exercise goal, if we get more snow, I would love to cross country ski or climb Bolton 1 time a week through the winter. So how do I achieve this when we're a working, busy family? 2 mornings, I don't go in until 11 a.m. So I'm going to say, instead of doing my paperwork for work 1 morning a week, which is what I usually do, I'm going to go out and go cross-country skiing. Or if I want to climb Bolton on the weekend, making sure and planning ahead that I have a babysitter instead of getting to Saturday and saying, hey, how am I going to get out there? So this allows me to plan. I have this goal as an endpoint through the winter time. For my nutrition, one of the big things of the blue zones is eating whole grains. So that's part of that plant-based diet. We have little kids here, so we tend to eat a lot of pasta, plain old white pasta here. So for me, changing that goal to having some kind of farro or brown rice risotto a night, for that actually means me changing how I'm shopping and changing how I'm planning. So that's how I'm going to achieve that goal. My injury prevention is kind of like all of you. I have back pain. And kind of like all of you, I do my back PT sometimes. And it's usually when my back hurts a lot. So in order to get cross-country skiing and get to Bolton without having that back pain, I actually need to do my PT as well. But again, like most of you, I don't want to spend 45 minutes doing it. So my goal is going to be 5 to 10 minutes, 2 times a week. That's allowing me to create a routine. That's actually the hardest part of making a goal, is having a routine. And hopefully I could build from that. So those are examples of what I'd like to do for this winter. And then, reassessing at the end of the winter and saying, okay, can I build on these, or do I change them because the season changes? So hopefully this will give you guys some ideas of, what might be helpful for you in creating some wellness goals for this year. And that's it. Happy New Year.
I think it's interesting, and I'm certainly aware of it, and you just made me more aware of it, that every time you deal with a PT patient, you create goals for everybody.
Yes, we do.
And so, and it's something that us typically, we might have goals in the job for the daily routine, the daily, planning of the day, which is good and which we need, but we don't have any real personal goals in that same sense.
Yes. Yeah, hopefully everyone takes a little step back and picks, all of these or one of these to create some of those personal goals and kind of combine that. So that'd be nice.
Okay, well, thanks for joining us this morning.
You're welcome. Have a good one. Stay safe out there.
All right, take care. Okay, I'll take over the screen. There we go. I think I forgot to download the pictures, so I'll push that button. You can tell me if it's going to work here. So are the pictures on the screen?
We got them. Yep.
Okay. All right. So this out of the way, and then I'll slide it down. The announcements. Just wanted to let everyone know that starting in 2023, or so starting back at the beginning of the year, all proceeds from the UCI sweatshirt and t-shirt sales will be donated to the Classic Mike Lawyer Foundation. Last year, as we talked about before, $8,956 was donated to the UVM cancer research through this program. And just to let you know a little bit more about how it works, you can contact Sarah about purchasing sweatshirts and t-shirts and a variety of those type of garments. with ECI and maybe the pink cancer ribbon, those kind of things on them. And the company purchases them and sells them at a 50% discount, but the company's purchase is covered in by the company, and then the entire proceeds of the purchases goes to in this case, the Michael Loyer Foundation. So the company buys the garments, and anyone who wants them can buy them at 50% discount off the purchase price, and then everything all the revenue from it goes to these different charities. And hey, look at this. We have a birth announcement for Michael Quirino Forrester. Hopefully, Michael, I pronounced your middle name right. I was told to use a kind of an Italian accent, but I don't have it in me, I guess. Congratulations, Phil, Ruth, and of course, big brother Malcolm. So pretty exciting news over at the Forrester house. Congratulations there. So the employee annual giving, we talked about this, the Michael Loyer Classic, the National Guard, Vermont National Guard Charitable Trust, the UVM Medical Center Cancer Foundation, and Make-A-Wish. And there's the numbers from last year. And then we have a picture from last week when we went to, just gonna hold that. I don't want it to keep moving. There we go. A picture from last Friday where we had several people from ECI take the check in this, the mock-up check for the ceremonial part to the Make-A-Wish over at the Teddy Bear, Vermont Teddy Bear, where they have their own little office and facility and Make-A-Wish type environment. And we brought that over to, let's see, there's Jamie and I don't know who the young lady is sitting next to Ben taking the check. Ben, actually, do you or anyone else who attended, does anyone have any comments? I guess they came back. I didn't go. They came back very excited about the whole process and what they learned there. So Ben,
Yep.
You want to highlight a couple things?
Yeah, the girl sitting to my left was a wish recipient. When she was
that's right.
When she was young, she had a stroke and ended up having to do quite a recovery period, and she wrote a book, and you can see that book that Angela has.
Yep.
Is they got a whole bunch of them behind Jamie's elbow on the shelf, and they give them to all the wish recipient kids.
Yep.
And it's just about what to expect and what her experience was with Make-A-Wish. So she wrote this book, published this book, and she read us the story. We all sat down, and they said, "Okay, now we're gonna put you guys through the same experience that the wish people get when they come in. Like the young people, when they come in, they don't quite know what the wish is, and the parents kind of have an idea of what the wish is, but they want to make sure that they get the right wish. So they go in, they read this story, and they get them all comfortable. They have different places that they go, and to get them in a certain frame of mind, and they read them a story, which we all sat and heard a story, which was kind of cool. At first, we were like, "We're gonna have a story," and we all sat down, and it was good. Especially from, I can't remember her name. I don't know if anyone else remembers. It's written on the book there. I think it's Emma. And then they go to a room and they sit down with people, and they have a certain book that they fill out, which at the end of it, it's kind of cool the way it's written. It asks all kinds of questions, and at the end, it has a whole bunch of options for different wishes that they discover. So it was quite a moving experience that we all had. I think that everyone there really, like Ronnie there. Look at Ronnie's face. Ronnie's that tough old construction dude, but I'll tell you, he was like a little kid in that story time. It was a good experience. They do really good things for people, Ken. So
I hope that next year, I'm assuming we'll be donating to them again.
Yeah.
And I hope next year that others get to go and deliver the check and experience the same thing that you guys did, because it certainly it made an impact on every one of you when you came back. I was pretty impressed.
You know what really got us was they brought us around that whole facility there. It's in the Vermont Teddy Bear back end, and there was photos of all these wish recipients like over time. And Jamie, the guy, the director, he's the guy all the way to the left of the photo next to Tom. He told us the story about each of the recipients. And the part that was heartbreaking was he says, yep, and yep, of course that most of them had passed away. So he says, yeah. And then that person passed away a couple years ago. And that was the hard part. The connection, watching that connection. There was one particular wish that really got us, that they turned around really quick. This little guy had, I think, maybe 10 weeks to live max. And they put this wish together to put this train down in Bellows Falls and convert it into the Polar Express. And they got a bunch of actors and people that got into character, and they drove they actually got the railroad to help them. They got on the train, drove the train a little bit, went back into the station, and they converted it into like the North Pole.
Yeah, pretty cool.
And that was like, they turned that around, and that kid was just ecstatic. And that particular kid, I think, only lived a few weeks after that, which is just crazy.
Yeah, and it's great that Make-A-Wish and the contributions from ECI employees can help make that difference in a young person's life who's facing these kind of illnesses. So.
Yeah.
All right. Well, next year I hope to see other people there, maybe a lot more, and others, because I think everyone would get a lot out of it.
Yep.
So I'll move on here. The ECI Primary Care Wellness Plan Program. I guess here we go. Here is a goal for wellness that, like Amy talked about, this is like a really simple goal, right? Call up and make an appointment and go and get established in the primary care wellness program. If you're already in it, then the goal is to go and call it, get your appointment made and reestablish your yearly baseline. So this is it, an easy goal. For upcoming weather, we do have obviously snow out there. There's some winter weather advisories that continue into today because the snow will be coming back a little bit during the day. And then possibly a storm again on Monday, Sunday night, Monday, it sounds like on that forecast. And now I'll turn it over to Ben McKinney. Ben, are you going to take over, or do you want me to?
Yeah, why don't you keep control, Ken, and you can scroll through pictures, so I'll just look at the text and you can scroll to whatever you want.
Okay, well, there you got a full screen, and I'll scroll down as you progress through it.
And if you guys like looking at the pictures, you can make them bigger by clicking control and scrolling up at the same time, or just clicking the pop out button.
Zoom out too.
If you're on your desktop.
There we go. Is it zooming out for you on from my screen?
I was on mine. Hold on, let me go back to yours.
It is, Ken. Yep.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm
Nice
just
and
trying to
big.
get a little more. There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. For some reason, it kind of reset for me, but there we go. So go ahead, Ben.
Yeah. All right. So it's a project update. We highlighted this job back in probably late summer, early fall. We're going to talk more about the Clarendon, Wallingford, and Manchester bridge projects. ECI has contracted with VTrans on the Clarendon, Wallingford VTRY 3844 and Manchester VTRY 27 through 31 projects. These two separate bridge rehab contracts involve a total of 8 different bridges, 5 as part of the Clarendon, Wallingford, and 3 as part of the Manchester contract. This time, ECI has completed all 3 of our precast installation shutdowns, plus a bonus shutdown for a complex structural steel installation sequence in Manchester. That was just maybe 2 weekends ago. So for those precast installations. The two that we had talked about last time we highlighted this jobs were bridge seat and back wall units at Bridge 89 in Wallingford and Bridge 71 in Manchester. But today we're going to talk about the third and final precast installation, which was at Bridge 93 in Clarendon. This bridge is a 120-foot long through truss constructed in 1902 by the American Bridge Company. This famed constructor built scores of bridges, skyscrapers, and marine installations throughout the world, including contributions to the Chrysler Building and Empire State Building in New York City, of course. Their headquarters now is in Coraopolis, Pennsylvania, which is an industrial town right on the Ohio River, just west of Pittsburgh. ECI's scope of work at Bridge 93 included replacing the existing back walls with new precast units. Precast back walls were detailed and built in-house by ECI right here in our Williston yard. So if you were around the shop this summer and you saw the really big L-shaped pieces, the biggest pieces that we built, that's what we're talking about here. And these 36,000-pound units had a very long heel to resist overturning due to lateral earth pressure loads, which are amplified by train live load surcharge. So
that includes breaking in traction loads. I mean, it's not just the bounce of the car or the locomotive going through there. If they have to go into emergency stop or something, that can be some pretty serious loads.
Yeah, for sure. It goes right down through the ties. And that's a good point, Ken. That's not something normally we design our temporary work for, but it's certainly a factor.
Yep.
Especially as they start, fixing up, these tracks like they've done a little further north of here, and the track speeds get a lot higher. So those of you that have been involved in retaining wall construction would recognize that these spread footings are often much bigger on one side, usually on the side that gets backfilled, and that's called the heel. Even though it's bigger than the toe, it's called the heel. And so these units have very large heels, and the heels likely have a double function as approach slabs. Normally, we think of an approach slab as something much closer to a road or railroad surface that distributes load to avoid heavily loading the back wall. In this case, because it's at the bottom of the back wall, it's preventing overturning with that load and surcharge helping to keep it planted and not rotating. But it likely also plays a role in then distributing that surcharge load from being quite so amplified to the structure beneath, which was the abutment to remain. So the last time we highlighted this project set, we mentioned difficult access, and Bridge 93 was no exception. We established site access to the south side of the bridge off the interstate-style limited access portion of Route 7, south of Rutland, by building a long access road through private property, permitting it with both, the state as our owner, but also the district for doing essentially a curb cut on an interstate, and then also going through environmental and archaeological clearances for the private property and dealing with the landowner as well. However, we needed to get a crane and the precast on the north side of the bridge as well, where there was really no highway access. And the reason is the north side is an island. This truss bridge actually spans an overflow that's changed over the years with different floods. It was generally dry while we were there, not dry like you want to go lay down in it, but really no flowing water. Although we understand during different flood events, it has tons of water. You can obviously imagine that in 1902, they wouldn't just put up huge structures at their convenience. So they certainly knew where their problem areas were. And I guess there needs to be a bridge here because, with enough rain and runoff, it runs. But just north of here is a through girder bridge over, I think, the Mill River or the Mill Brook. If any of the guys that worked on the job are listening, you guys can correct me. So that north side's an island, right? You've got two bridges, and it's an island that's inaccessible, maybe with a four-wheeler or something, but inaccessible by equipment or even pickups off any highway. So what we did to get everything over there ahead of the shutdown is we used crane mats to create a hardwood highway across the truss so we could walk our link belt TCC 750 to the island and stage it there ahead of the shutdown. We brought our precast in via high rail. then unloaded it and got everything all set ahead of time. So the bridge is on a curve with substantial super elevation. I didn't write down what it was. I'm guessing 2 or 3 inches of super elevation. So we took the opportunity to level things out as well. We didn't want the bridge or the crane sliding into the truss structure either. Crane made the journey across the bridge without counterweights, putting it just under 100,000 pounds. That's how it has to be to travel, even on 4 axles for the 3-axle tractor in this state. And we set the boom angle to distribute the weight between the front and the back of the 20-foot long track base as much as we could without getting the rooster ship up into the top racing in the truss portal. So we deliberated for a number of months about using separate shutdowns for each side of 93 or doing it all in one shot. We pros and cons to both. We did have enough shutdowns in our contract to do one at a time, but it's more weekends. There's probably some economy of scale, a little higher risk tackling the whole thing at once. And we were getting late in the year. This shutdown ended. The train came through on Halloween, so we're getting a little deeper into the season and ultimately gaining confidence from the prior shutdowns and having the resources available. We decided to do it all in one shot. So we had a 58-hour.
The weather helped too.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, I remember it being pretty warm. I wasn't at the shutdown, but I remember I was just getting back into this side of the country when they were finishing up, but I remember it being pretty warm.
Halloween weekend, I think.
Yeah, because Halloween was a Monday, and I think our first train went through on Monday. So we had a 58-hour contract by 58-hour shutdown by contract. We had a bunch of them. We had 282s and I don't know how many 58s, a lot. And we only used a couple prior to this. So we negotiated with the railroad for an extra day. We said, look, we're not going to use like all 7 or 8 that you gave us. We only need 3. Plus, we might work a weekend when you're not on trains anyway. Why don't you make it a little longer and we'll just get it done in one shot? And they went for it. So the thing about doing it all in one shot, that meant cutting off access to that North Island. It's an island no matter what, but if you leave the approach in on the south, you've got easy high rail access from your staging area. To do them both in one shot meant everything was Shanghai to the north, unless you went all the way around and put on the tracks and came down. Even then, that would be high rail only. So after the train passed on Thursday evening, the guys got right to work and worked diligently to remove track, excavate, demo the existing kind of a hybrid concrete and masonry back walls, and construct crane pads, fine grade, set precast, grout, backfill, reset the track, and surface or tamp the tracks and get it train ready. Although the first train wasn't set to arrive until Monday morning, the crew finished on Sunday with plenty of time to spare. I went back and looked at time logs and foundation, and it looks like the guys had worked like 6 or 7 hours on Sunday versus like 16 or 17 hours the nights before. So again, not having been there, that tells me that it was a pretty comfortable completion. We're the only bidder on the job. We're not quite sure what the big deal is. Once you do a few of these, it's just all comes down to planning. You gotta make the lies come true, but planning's huge. The next week, we'll talk a little more about structural steel and the bearing rehab, which is what we've been working on for the last couple months, down on all 8 bridges. So you can see that shot that Ken's scrolling to now is a picture from, looking really at the island from north of that through truss. That through truss is similar. I think it might be 2-span, but that, basic layout similar to our bridge at 89 over the Otter Creek. We didn't do any work on this particular bridge, but you can see the 93 truss, which we just talked about, in the background.
So that curve continues right through the truss, huh?
Yeah, it does.
Interesting.
It might be in the spiral, but I'm not sure. It's it's pretty aggressive, and when you get a big, even with grousers, grousers on hardwood, especially if it's wet, isn't.
Oh yeah.
We definitely wanted to take some of the curse out of it with our blocking.
Yep.
So you can see the plaque with some damage below the plaque. I don't think that's rust. It almost looks like somebody tried to steal it, which is common, or possibly hit with dragging equipment. Regardless, this was part of our structural steel scope. Kind of odd, not usually the structural steel work we did, but anyway, we fixed that. 1902. See the existing back walls, pretty good sized bearings on these longer bridges. Of course, more expansion and contraction and higher loads. This bridge weighs 260 kip, just sitting there. We'll talk about that more next week when we talk about jacking it up in the air. But the locomotive themselves, is another, could be 280,000 pounds or somewhere in the range of the bridge. So pretty high loads on those bearings, which were also replaced on this specific side. Just a cut sheet from our engineering for the crossing. We had to make sure that we didn't do any damage to the historic structure with the crane, even though the crane without counterweights is lighter than a locomotive. The load distribution is very different. The track width is much wider than a truck, a set of trucks in the rail.
So one of the reasons we put this in here is just to highlight the point that we go through some careful calculations to verify things are all right. So we want to make sure we're totally consistent with these assumptions in the field before we put loads on it, right?
Yep.
So if there's questions that come up, then certainly, hopefully, those questions get put back on you or whoever designed it.
Yeah. So look, we're designing for mixed oak blocking there. So if it's anything but mixed oak, you guys better be calling me. No, but in all honesty, obviously mixed hardwood would probably be fine, but we would not want to use softwood, stuff like that.
But I mean, in some cases, the way we block up under the stringers or above the stringers and the floor beams can make a big difference. The load path is what the assumptions on the load path are critical here.
Yeah, for sure. And we looked at this, before we did it, and these are kind of a structural tie, and the rail is actually inside. I think this, and it's been a little while. I think this is a single stringer bridge. It might be well, obviously two, but I don't think it's a 4-stringer bridge. I think it's singles. But either way, the rail was significantly inside the stringers, which is not uncommon with a big, heavy, deep structural tie, like bridge ties usually are. But it actually worked in our favor because our track width, all scoped in, actually was more concentric. It got that load right over the stringers better, which is good. If it hadn't, though, and we had to block it to get that load path right, yeah, you wouldn't want to mess around with that blocking and put load where you don't want it. I mean, it's heavy stuff, and this isn't a real heavy bridge. It looks like big strong bridge, and it is, but it's not real. I mean, the construction is not really ultra heavy like some of the longer trusses you see.
Right. Yeah.
Looks like a proud Alec and Chandler riding one of the back walls. Those were tough, even just to ship. That they were all different. And I should have mentioned there was some cast in place work for closure pours, in addition to grouting and pinning them together. There was some cast in place work to tie them into the existing wing wall and back wall structure that remained.
I think it'll show up in some of the pictures here.
You can see we did fabrication drawings in house. See the ECI logo at the bottom. So that was cool. It's cool to have the ability to do that. Hand it to the guys. They were all different, not by a ton, but they were all a little different. And shipping them down here was, they were wide escorted loads. They were so wide. See demo. It's probably the first night. Crane is already crossed, so you can still see some of the blocking left on the deck.
So they took off the blocking. Well, that was a week before.
Yeah, I say that. I'm sure that the crane crossed a long time ago. I'm not sure what those ties are for. If they don't look like they were approach ties, but.
So what I was wondering then, did they reblock and send the crane back over during the shutdown, or did they wait and keep the crane on the other side?
That's a good question, and I don't know the answer to that. I'm sure one of the guys listening could unmute and tell us.
Yeah.
We use the 138 on one side and the 750 on the other.
Understood. The question was whether the 750 crossed back over the shutdown.
No.
So it was a later weekend, a later time.
Yeah, it was like a week later.
Yep, got it.
Okay, so it was definitely a two-stringer bridge.
Yep. Until at the N4 beam there. This
Off,
looks like it was just right up to drop a piece in.
it's a good place to end the night on.
Yep.
Get the 750, so that's the machine that crossed the tracks on a crane pad with the fabric lapped up. That's not just dirt, guys.
Double checking the subgrade before they place the first piece, I'd say.
Here's the 138 on the south side. No need for an advanced crane pad there. Of course, he's got a better chart and can sit back a little more. One piece
Yep.
already set, flying the next piece in. Looks like a chilly morning. Both pieces set, ready for grout on the south. It's our grout mixing
no.
operation.
All hands on deck for grouting.
There's a Dayton Superior HD50. That was the first time I had ever used it. I think it was a good product. Well, I shouldn't say that time I wasn't there, but the weekend prior or the shutdown prior to that.
Backfilling. This is when I was here, when I was down there for the backfilling. And then putting the tracks back together, huh?
Tracks are in, getting it surfaced up. See the back wall sitting on, the existing construction below the bridge seat elevation. The spray foam and the lumber you see is a grout dam. Form around it to keep the grout in. Quite a bit of head on that grout too, because remember, it's got to go up the whole stem wall.
Right.
HD50 sets so fast that the felt pressures are probably reduced as long as you go a little slow. Closure pour into the existing work. Very neat and tidy cleanup job.
They made it look easy. Great job.
Yeah, these jobs were cool because we, like we do on a lot of shutdowns, we ultimately had, a bunch of different crews involved and a bunch of different crew leaders all working together, it's really neat to all come together and just have it flow really well. So it's nice when we can do that. And it's
Definitely.
necessary too, because you weren't going to tackle this work with 5 guys.
Right. And you don't have to rely on subcontractors as much that you hope perform during that shutdown.
Right.
Well, thanks, Ben. That was great.
Yeah.
That was a very good presentation. Great job. Very interesting. And next week we'll talk, like Ben said, about the steel work and the bearing work. So looking forward to that. And then for the photo archives, I grabbed a picture from the Pine Street Railroad Overpass Bridge in Rutland. And this is somewhat of a similar type of thing, except that there was new steel in this one.
That looks like Ron, who you saw in our project we just talked about. Looks like a young Pat Wells and Mike Twombly.
Yeah, we were all younger back then, weren't we?
It might even, it almost looks like Randy and Richie up top, although I'm not sure.
It might have been. Yeah.
It's like a classic Richie Munster shirt right there.
Yeah, access wasn't as much an issue here because Pine Street in Rutland was down underneath, so quite easy to get to this one. But the same idea for replacing. Although we took the entire superstructure out there and put in the new foundation, new back wall and bearing seats, and then brought in a brand new, already pre-assembled bridge and dropped it in place.
Mike looks nervous. He looks like he hopes it fits.
Man, yeah. All right, good. Thank you, Ben. Thanks, Matt. I'll let you take it over. Have a safe day out there.
Thanks, guys. Let's be safe out there, especially on the roadways. Follow that code of conduct. Drive safely, defensively, and courteously. Let's be safe today. Have a great day.
Okay, have a good one.